Hello, it is the 3rd of August. I am Shane Greenup, and this is my daily stream, which hasn't happened for about 2 or 3 weeks, in part because I was successfully working pretty much every day and recording interviews for a podcast that I started, Everything Misinfo. And so because I was doing that, I was making videos anyway, talking to people and being productive and had lots happening. So part of the reason for me recording these videos was to motivate myself to keep active and keep things happening. And because I was getting up every morning and busily getting on with it, the incentive to make these videos and the purpose and the point of having it to help motivate me just wasn't necessary. And so I was being creative and making content anyway, so it just didn't seem like I needed to worry about it. But then we went to Scotland for a week. Went camping, so I didn't have a lot of internet access, and of course was busy driving and looking around at things. And so nothing's been done for that week. And then I got back and had to unpack and settle back into things as happens after a big trip. And so haven't done anything since then. And so now this is me getting back into it. Part of it is also it's now summer holidays, and so Leonardo doesn't have daycare as much as he did. Vanessa's mum's still around and helping, but since we've been back, we've had him the whole time, and he's here again today. But Vanessa's mum will take him out a bit later, but he could walk in at any moment because he's roaming around doing the 4-year-old thing. So all that said, I am here again to try and get back into working on the podcast, and I've still got to do the crowdfunding. Like, it's still just waiting to be done, and I keep finding other things to work on that aren't the crowdfunding because obviously my brain just refuses to do it. But it should be the most important thing for me to work on. but okay, the podcast thing is very motivating. It's I think it works very much with my personality and who I am, and is timely and is just an opportunity that I can't pass up. So I don't feel guilty for working on the podcast instead of crowdfunding, because potentially the podcast is the better move for me than the direct method of trying to crowdfund and setting up the Socratic web. That's still not true, because I should crowdfund the Socratic web so that I have a Socratic web landing page and logo and an organization, so that there is something that I can say, yes, I'm working on that, rather than just constantly it's like, yeah, I'm working on this Socratic web project. It doesn't exist. There's nothing to look at. It's just a blog article I wrote. Like, of course, there's a lot more to the Socratic web than just the blog article, but when I meet people and I tell them about it, there is no entity to refer them to or website or anything like that. It's just a blog post. So I should set that up. It is a priority. In the meantime, though, this podcast thing is probably the right thing for me to be working on, because I've realized, like, the more I interact with people working on the misinformation problem, and I get into this community of academics and activists and researchers and entrepreneurs and journalists, the more clear it is that this is such a substantial problem and really not going away, and no one seems to really know what to do about it. Everyone's sort of grappling around in the dark. So I'm well positioned to integrate myself into that community and to do something significant, which I think I think I already am with the Socratic web. But it's not just building Socratic web. It's bringing the experience I had with Rebutta and the knowledge I have of the web and philosophy and science and the way that I think I bring something unique to it that I don't see in a lot of other people who come at it from a background of journalism or social science research, all of which is important. But my point is that there's lots of that and very little of what I bring. So I think I have a unique role in it and the space, and by creating a podcast, it's playing perfectly into my personality. I keep saying I suck at writing. It's not that I suck at it, it's that it's painful for me. I don't enjoy writing. and I feel like I have to wrench every word out of my head, and then I'm second guessing all the time. Talking I find quite natural. I just ramble. It's not always great. I don't think I'm a great communicator by any standard. I think my word choice is usually poor. It's unthought out. And I'll ramble and I'll waste time, but I can do it, and I'm comfortable doing it, and confident enough that I get the message out in the end. Which is one of the reasons why the podcast is focused on interviewing, because then I can rely on the other person a lot more to prompt me and to sort of keep me on track a little bit. Whereas when I'm by myself, I have no external influences or prompts to keep me directed or to stop me from rambling. So anyway, I'm excited about this podcast idea. And so part of that is developing it, getting it going, and evolving the idea, and figuring out what makes sense for it. And one of the ideas I've had is to split off the interview from sort of the news aspects, so that I have like a news discussion episode and an interview focused episode, rather than trying to cram the news into a quick headline version at the beginning of each interview show. And so part of that means I'm constantly trying to keep up with all of the articles that are relevant, fake videos. So this is the current list of, these are the current tabs I have open, things that I need to read. Why do people share fake news? Associate technical model of media effects. The bias detectors, research is trying to make algorithms fair. I'm constantly being exposed to these sorts of articles and the research that's happening, but I don't always read it. Like I read the headings, and then maybe I read the abstract, and I'm like, okay, then I get it, and move on. But by doing the podcast, I think I need to actually read everything properly, take notes, and form an opinion on it, and incorporate that into the news headlines, the news episode, and discuss and form opinions. And of course, part of the idea around this news episode ideally is to have a panel. So I want to have 1 to 3 other people with me in each episode. Now that's its own struggle, and that will happen as it happens. But that's the goal. But in the meantime, I just put it all on me. I've got to read them. I've got to form the opinions. I've got to make the episodes just talking at the camera, exactly like I'm doing now, but in the Everything is Info channel with a very directed purpose. And so not only do I think that could be potentially interesting to the misinformation community who are working on this problem, but I think that will help me to become one of the most well-informed people in this space. I'll keep up with what everyone knows. I'll be interviewing all the people working in the space. I'll be reading everything that comes out. This should really help me sort of cement myself into the space as, not just some guy working on one project who thinks he knows shit. If reading all of the research and all of the articles that come out in space isn't how you become an expert on something, I don't know what is. On top of having already built something in the space and being involved in it before it was even a thing. Like I think my background already primed me for being well suited to having a basis of forming an opinion and a claim to expertise as much as anyone can in the space. But the point that I'm getting at is I'm excited to do this in part because over the course of time, assuming I keep it up, and it's always a struggle with me, is not getting bored or not getting overwhelmed with I can't be bothered feelings. Then over the course of time, I will be well recognized, and it will be clear that I know what I'm talking about, and people will know me because they will have seen all these videos that I'm putting out and content that I create that clearly shows me engaging with every piece of research and everything that comes out. And I think as a career path, that's a very, very sensible move. As I said, I don't think this problem's going away, not anytime soon, and I think the community needs something to help organise them, which is, I haven't read Sarah Jane's article here, but I think this is sort of the topic what she's writing about here is how do we react to these attacks and what are we doing? People are attacking them. It's like, a few people are actively counting. Enough people are writing about what misinformation attacks have happened, what they look like, and what motivates attackers. Few people are actively countering. Here are some. This article is what are we as a community doing, and how are we handling them, and how do we sort of one of the things she's talking about is how we coordinate ourselves, and that's kind of the role that I'm trying to take on with the podcast. I think it's an important thing for someone to step up and do, and if it's me, then that's good for me and my career, which I am focusing on and obsessed with because I don't have one. As a generalist and entrepreneur who has not made money as an entrepreneur, someone who's just struggled to get by through luck and tenacity and scrounging. Having a career that earns money has always been a struggle for me because I say I'm unemployable. I'm sure I could get jobs, but whether I enjoy those jobs and stick with them is a whole other question, and I think that's probably apparent in my applications. And so finding something that I care about and passionate about, that I could become recognized as an expert in, that could lead to actual formal relations, what's it called, consulting gigs with large companies that pay well, or even being hired by universities as a lecturer, as a teacher, as a whatever. And I've even considered going back and doing a master's or a PhD with the right university, doing the right research, though I'm not sure what that looks like yet. But I'm open to the idea as a way of sort of formalizing my knowledge and expertise into a way that's more recognized, if I need to, and not even if I need to. I kind of want to. I kind of want to get down into that sort of research that that forces me to put together what I know into a format that that formalizes it, that makes it research, that makes it broadly accepted as more than just my opinion. It's definitely something I struggle with. A lot of this is fundamentally my opinion from my experience, and it's not well formalized. Anyway, so I'm excited about that prospect of doing something which could create a career path and a cementation of expertise in a field that is beginning, brand new, hitherto unknown, previously not recognized or cared about, where clearly, generally everyone's lost, and I could become a trailblazer of sorts, and in a historic sense, that's pretty cool. And that is one of the reasons why I do keep coming back to Rebutta. I've had so many interests in things that are kind of trailblazing over the years. Like, I just get attracted to things that seem worth doing. So cosmology was one of my first interests, which led me to longevity research, lifespan extension, because I figured we didn't live long enough to do cosmology. I wanted to live longer. And so I was interested in that when I was 15, back in like 96 or 97, I guess. 96 when I was 15. And I was obsessed with that for like many years, and then I got to university and started doing, and I took on philosophy as well, and got very interested in philosophy of biology and evolution, and sort of went down that atheist evolution path. And so on the internet I was constantly arguing with people who, Christians and religious people about those sorts of things, and spent many years really focusing on those discussions and enjoying that. And slowly sort of lost interest in the aging stuff, though it's still a core belief and desire of mine. I still want science to find out why we get old and stop it. But my motivation to participate in it was sort of lost, because as I learned more and as I knew more about it, on one hand, I knew that I probably couldn't contribute too much to it. There's people way smarter than me working on it. And one more scientist isn't going to make much of a difference. And I'm better suited to this higher level grappling with concepts and solving them than I am. And I discovered this when I was doing my honours year of research, than I am sitting at a desk doing the work, doing the meticulous, repetitive labour of discovery is not suited to my personality at all. So it became obvious that I wasn't going to go down that path that I thought I was going to go down, of becoming a scientist and a PhD and a professor, and then I'm going to figure out how to stop aging. And besides, I got the impression it was sort of happening anyway. As I said, other people way smarter than me were working on it. It's the trend of scientific progress. It's an obvious thing, even though people don't focus on aging so much, and that's one of the complaints of the anti-aging research people, is that we focus on fixing illness. But aging is the ultimate cause of most illnesses that kill people, so if we can sort of, focus on the causes of the problem, then maybe we can solve a lot of the other illness problems, but it's hard to measure that, and it sort of goes against the way that medical research works, which only wants to treat things that are broken, whereas aging, of course, is natural, therefore we don't treat it. So, blah, 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 blah. Point is that I was obsessed with it for a long time, and as I got into it, I'm like, okay, I don't think I can contribute much to this, and so I lose interest in things if I'm not being useful. I don't like wasting time. I don't like wasting other people's time. I like getting things done that are worth doing. Straight out of university, I stumbled into affiliate marketing because I discovered sports arbitrage trading and got interested in it. I just get little obsessions, got interested in it, started researching, and found there was bugger all information on it. So I felt useful. I could make that information. I could publish what I'd found, and I made a website, and that made me money. So that was my first experience of, hey, you make shit that people want, and it can earn you a living. And so then I had to teach myself internet marketing and affiliate marketing and all that stuff, and that was good. That taught me a lot, and I learned a lot and got good at stuff. And then Immortal Outdoors was another example of why isn't there a map for all things? So I built that because no one else was doing it. Rebutter was the same. It was I had this idea for Rebutter, and I spent a long time trying to find someone who had done it because it was so obvious. I thought someone would have done it. When I found no one had, it's okay, then I've got to step up and do it because no one else has done it. And then the same sort of thing happened with universal basic income. Was I was noticing the trend online. There was a lot of groundswell behind it, and things were happening on the internet. And I spent 2 years. Took about 2 years between discovering the concept and going, and of course the initial reaction being, well, that sounds too good to be true, and sort of writing it off as unreasonable. But then being interested enough to keep reading every article that came across my path, and starting to like groups on Facebook and follow things and join the subreddit, and so frequently reading articles. About 2 years after of that process, before I went, holy shit, this is necessary. It's not the solution, but it's a necessary next step. And so when that clicked, and having seen that groundswell slowly growing for 2 years, and seeing the trials beginning in Finland and the Netherlands and stuff, it's stuff was happening, but mostly in Europe. I was what's happening in Australia? And nothing was. So I started a meetup group and started organizing events, and I started a Facebook group. And again, the thing that caused me to act was I couldn't see anyone doing it where they needed to be doing it. So in my case, in Australia, no one was really doing it at the time. So I started doing it. Then Indie Bio happened, which sort of took me away from it. But in that process, more and more people started coming into the community, into the group, and I saw more and more people doing things. And so I feel less pressure to be active in that now, because, again, it's I don't think there's particularly anything special that I bring to it that others in the group can't do or aren't doing. I continue, again, same as longevity research. I continue to be a supporter. I continue to believe in it. It continues to be important to me. But I want to put my time where I see the value being, where I can add something to it. Which brings me to this podcast and the misinformation problem. This is the one thing that has consistently stuck around, where clearly no one else is seeing things the way I am, and continue to do things that I consider to be dangerous and counterproductive. And so my place here, to me, is really clear. in that if I'm not here saying the things that I'm saying, I'm not sure anyone else will. So my role is necessary here. And so because of the importance of this problem, like I consider misinformation, I've said this many times, and I'll say it again, misinformation I think is one of, if not the most important problem that we face as a species. Because every other problem can in some way or another be reduced to the problem of not having the correct beliefs, not having the access to decent enough approximation of truth to make the right decisions. And the first level of that is having the right information to begin with. So that's the realms of, is science good enough to get to the truth, and is philosophy working, and social sciences. And that's hard, but again, everyone knows that that's a hard problem and everyone's working on that. Like I don't need to say that no one needs to point that out. It's obvious and people are trying to solve it, and it's a hard problem, and they will keep working on it and hopefully incrementally improving our methods of approximating the truth on the expert forefront of knowledge level. But after that, communicating that forefront of knowledge to the population, that's fucked. It's like, it's been bad throughout all history, but it's like possibly being worse, getting worse. Possibly the worst it's ever been. I don't know. I can't quantify that. That doesn't matter so much. But what's clear is that we have a misinformation problem, and we have a clear disparity between expert opinion and best knowledge, as best as we can approximate it, and public opinion. And the stats that I'll always bring up to that is the American belief in creationism and the Earth being 6,000 years old is like 30 to 40%, depending on how the question's worded. And like climate change is still like a vaguely 50-50 public belief issue, rather than a 97% public belief, which is the scientific consensus on it is in that order. It's like 97 to 99% of people in that space go, yes, climate change is real and humans are causing it, and the public is still like, I'm not sure. So that disparity between the expert, the best knowledge that we have, and what the public believes is so great, and that's what's causing us to act badly. So assuming the first step is being done as well as possible, and I think it works pretty well. Again, and this is one of my backgrounds, is philosophy of science. It's like I do understand how it works, and it's not perfect, and there's flaws, and I'm seeing the criticism, they're valid criticism, and we should improve them. But nothing else comes close. Nothing else comes close. And Richard Dawkins said, how do you know science works? Oh, why do you trust science? It's because it works, bitches. It gets us to the moon. It gets us to Mars. It gets us to other planets. We land things like they're engineering, but engineering comes from fundamental research and understanding of things like F equals MA. You know, like science gets results. The problem is that when we get those scientific results and we get those expert opinions, and then we go to politics and we go, this is what the experts say, and then the politicians go, yeah, but the public has voted for this, so we're going to do this, and that's when we destroy the fucking planet. So to say that misinformation, or more accurately in my opinion, false beliefs being what cause people to create misinformation, other than disinformation, which is an intentional effort to undermine someone else or whatever. By and large, misinformation is caused by false beliefs, and misinformation creates false beliefs in new people. It is the biggest problem that we are facing, because every other issue that we are facing, from poverty to conflict, wars, climate change, pollution, one way or another come down to false beliefs, to people believing that their short-term profits are more important than the welfare. And that's actually kind of challenging as well, because sometimes, you know what, me not vaccinating may be the smartest choice. Like, there's economic arguments for selfishness that are problematic because they're true for the individual. But if everyone does it, then the population is harmed, and then it's not true for the individual because the population decays. But this is the hawk-dove game theory thing. There's always going to be people taking advantage of. If you build a system where something's given away for free, there's always going to be people taking advantage of it. There's no avoiding it. Anyway, brain going off on so many tangents. So the reason I was talking about all that is because this is a space that matters. It's hugely significant. It's potentially civilization destroying. It needs to be worked on and improved. I don't think there's such a thing as a fix to it. It's not going to go away, but we need to do things to ameliorate its its runaway nature, the fact that it's getting worse. We've always had false beliefs, we've always had misinformation, but they've been sort of contained because we don't have this massive dissemination of information. And so because the internet's come out, social media, it's like everyone has access to it all, and it's like just gone, it's the Cambrian explosion of ideas. And if we don't do something to stop the Cambrian explosion from creating some sort of, like creating a this is well before the Cambrian explosion, but like I guess creating the first photosynthetic organism that filled the atmosphere with oxygen was probably sort of what we're looking at this year. Creating an idea life form that will just change the idea environment so substantially that it will obliterate just about everything else, because oxygen is an incredibly dangerous, deadly chemical in the atmosphere that oxidative stress killed just about every other life form. Not certain of that, but I know that when that happened, that was devastating to all the other life. That then had to adapt, and then allowed, which then allowed all the other life to evolve, which has led to complex higher organisms, which is great, fantastic, I think. But not for everyone that was alive at that time of that organism that couldn't handle the oxidative stress, which is what we're facing right now. It's like, great, maybe we let this play out, and maybe Russia propagandizes the world and creates a nuclear war and destroys it, and we end up with the Fourth Reich of Nazism and as a fascist thing, and then they do kill everyone that's not the perfect genetic makeup. And then after that, life carries on, and there's a holy shit, that was really bad, and we won't do that again. And then we end up with this 1,000-year piece of perfect, harmonized living, which would be awesome. Just not for everyone that was killed in the process. Yeah. Speculation. So yeah, as long as I feel like I'm being useful here, and I've got something unique to bring, I'll continue to work here, and I don't think that's going to change. So this is probably my life, misinformation dude. And so UBI and lifespan extension stuff will therefore just be in the back seat until this problem's fixed, and then I can go back to them if they haven't been done. But if I solve this problem, then most other problems will sort of follow, will fall with it, because if you solve misinformation, people will stop believing crap, stop believing that, hey, giving money to people will stop them from working and then society will collapse. That's bullshit. Stop people believing that. UBI / a more moderate socialist sort of understanding of society will rise up, and we will have fairer, balanced societies where you don't have one person with enough wealth to feed the rest of the country for the whole year and think nothing of it and think, that's cool, I'm lucky, I worked hard, I deserve this, I deserve to have more money than an entire nation. That's fucking oh god, the lack of self-awareness of people in that position and for people in society that think that that's aspirational and success and great. It's just fucking crazy. What the fuck is the point of life if it's just to accrue fucking wealth at the expense of others, to stop others from having basic needs as a celebration of your success? Crazy. Oh, rant over. No one's watching this. No one's got this far. So there's no point in me thinking about all the other things I had to talk about. Got to do this, got to do podcasts, got to do crowdfunding. I've got to message all the fucking people to be on the podcast. I've got to get a guest. I haven't got a next guest. I've had 3 guests, and I emailed a bunch of people before I left and got no replies. Very disappointing. So I'm going to follow up with them all and message some more people. I was aiming high. I may have to just start messaging people that I actually have good relationships with, people that I talk to that are working on things, rather than people that regularly get invited onto the BBC to talk about misinformation. They're busy, obviously, and this little podcast that's not at all professional, that has no logo and no website and bad audio quality. I don't even have I'm still using my laptop microphone. Why would they want to do that? And they've got important things to do. So it's fair enough, but doesn't hurt to ask. So I've got to do that. Okay. On to real work. Bye bye.